Hey now, everyone. Welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast. And this episode is brought to you by Huntstand. Excited to announce that Huntstand is now doing monthly. They're introducing monthly satellite imagery. So what that means is every month, unlike some of the websites or some of the other apps that you've seen, that some of these photos from satellites could be 2, 3, even 4 years old. So Huntstand is now doing that monthly, so brand new images from the satellites monthly, so we can see how that ground looks and how it changes. So make sure to upgrade to Huntstand Pro. Use the code TakeAim10. Also, man, I am super excited. We are talking food plots today with Daryl Cherry from Big Tine. And if you just had any questions about food plots, we kind of cover everything in this episode. And Daryl is beyond a wealth of knowledge when it comes to seeds, what to plant, how to plant them, and how to build a strategy. So it's a great episode. Hope you guys enjoy. Deer season never ends. We'll see you guys again next week. All right, guys, we are live, brand new Take Aim podcast, and excited to be here. It's middle of summer practically, and this time of year, as we all know, everybody gets real excited about deer feed, minerals, getting those food plots in. So super excited to have Daryl Cherry from Big Tine Official with us. And Daryl, what's happening?
Not much, man. It's that time of the year, like you said. It's time to get out there in the field. And if you haven't already been out there, start putting out trail cams, checking your ground for where you're going to put your plots, maintaining your plots, and getting geared up. Time to hang the fishing poles up for a little while.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is that time to kind of talk about maybe strategy and, food plots and just overall herd health. But, I know, Daryl, you have a pretty intense background in this stuff. So kind of give us a rundown on kind of your background and doing food plots. And I know you basically have, designed what Big Tine is doing with their food plots for the last couple of years.
That's correct. I've been in the outdoor industry pushing probably 15 to 18 years or so now, and been working in food plots and supplements and that kind of stuff specifically for probably the last 11 to 12 years. And I food plotted before that, before getting actually into that as my job. I was doing it before. So, like you said, I came over here to Big Tine 2.5 years ago, and to work on product design operations. And being a small team, you kind of get pulled in different directions, which is great. And Joe Humphreys and myself, we kind of tackle the day-to-day in the office, have a great sales team on the outside that we partner up with. And, we make it happen. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of learning, constant learning. And, that's where we are today, growing brand in the industry. And I think most people know the Big Tine name by now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think Big Tine has totally, Daryl established itself as one of the leaders in feed, mineral, and now food plots. And it's just one of the companies I go to always to look for information and what good products are out and what potentially can I use. So, along with that, Daryl, like this time of year, let's say, or we can back it up to the start of spring even, but, what's kind of your plan running Big Tine? Like, how do you like to see the overall, phase for a guy that's trying to run a piece of property? When and what do you start with, and how do we kind of just build a strategy or a plan to that?
Well, I think one starting point with that is, strategy is the proper word, I believe, and it's figuring out, do I have the capability, whether it be, can the land support it? What can I financially do here to support my deer herd and the farm to make it, the best that it can? But if you've got to, determine, are you going to be able to feed? If you're going to be feeding, then, we're going to tell you that it's a 365-day a year deal if you can support that, and running the feeders and whatnot. And obviously there's game laws, by state you have to be aware of. A lot of states you can feed up until deer season, and you have to kind of quit. So you learning that piece of it. And then obviously mineral supplementation is a spring through summer type deal. We'll tell you that to supplement the mineral year round if you're able to. Also, just because the deer are needing certain levels of that. The heaviest consumption is definitely going to be through doe lactation and fawning and antler growth, of course, during the spring and summer. But they do need some of that other, mineral throughout the fall and winter. So, abandoning it, which is a common thing that people do, I'm guilty of it in the past too, is not the right thing. But again, you got to know what's going on in your area. But and the benefit of Big Tine, is we have our mineral in our feed. It's in all of our feed. So, if you're feeding Big Tine, you're going to continue to get that mineral supplement out there for your deer as long as alongside of the feed itself. But if you're not in a situation to feed, some states you can't feed at all ever. And if you're not, that's the beauty of where we are now, coming out with a full line of food plot seed mixes that we're going to continue to grow upon, and we're having some great success with. And it's from the beginning point is strategizing on your property. Where can I put food plots? Can I, do I own the property? Do I have permission from the landowner to do this, and so on. And then step one, once you identify where you're going to put it, step one and the most important step is start by investing in your soil, taking a soil test, which we sell on our website. And, we highly recommend specifically a laboratory type soil test versus some of the other kinds that are on the market, because you are going to get the most accurate result out of that you can get. But starting there and just seeing where you are starting from, and then from there you're going to determine, do you need to add lime? What nutrients do you need to add to your soil, and then determine what mix you want to plant. We've got quite a few fall and winter mixes. We've got a couple perennial mixes that are going to can be planted spring or fall. And then, determining, along with the strategy side of things, what's your goal? Is your goal to try to hold the deer with a food plot all year long? Or is it going to be, I just want to, I don't have a lot of ground. I've got maybe one or two food plots, they're small, whatnot. I just want to attract as many deer as I can during my hunting season to try to take advantage of drawing in something to shoot. And if that's the case, then, an annual is probably going to give you the most attraction in the fall. And just identifying what your strategy is going to be, all the way down to entry, exit, how you're going to hunt the plot. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. I mean, it doesn't need to be made complicated, but, those are the things of a well laid out plan will pay off in the long run.
So, Daryl, let's hypothetically make a property up, but let's start with property A that will be like a smaller piece of tract, and I can do two, let's say, half or quarter acre plots. So what would you suggest for a situation like that, for somebody that it's a smaller piece, maybe looking for, the same goal, to get deer there every day? You might not hold the deer on that property, but it's to get deer there. So what kind of, food plot, and what are we looking at attraction-wise to get them there?
Yeah, any of our annuals, our fall and winter annuals, the only one that it would be excluded there would be our new product this year called Borderline. But, I think we've got a representation there of products that some, like the Lockdown, is a winter pea mix that's going to have oats, wheat, different varieties of winter peas, an early season pea, and it's going to have some turnips in there to kind of give you some late season attraction and nutrition. However, you got a lot of components there that the deer are going to hit as soon as they come out of the ground. So being that could be part of your strategy of saying, hey, I'm going to have one of my plots set in lockdown over here, and that's going to be my, possibly my early bow through rut type plot. Like I said, you're still going to have your oats and your wheat and your turnips that are going to last throughout. And then having something in your other plot that, like Last Stand, which is more of a late season type mix, it's going to require more of that heavy frost, to break down and release the sugars in those plants to be attractive. And that kind of gets you to, two different options there since you did mention two different plots. Right. Another great option, probably one of my favorite annuals that we offer currently is our long range. And the reason I like that is kind of even tying to the point that we're making here is it is a mix of a lot of varieties of seeds that is more of a complete beginning to end of the season. So, you're not going to be, it's going to be a different strategy of, well, I've got this over here for my so-called early season, and I can get some hunts out of it later too. And then I've got this that I'm, just going to kind of save for my later season, knowing that that's when it's going to hit its peak, and I can maximize the hunting, at least over there. But the long range is really, like I said, a beginning to end. You've got oats, you've got wheat, a variety of different brassicas in there that are going to mature and become palatable at different rates and different times, and then a crimson clover also. So, you've got a lot of variety that's going to be attracting, deer from beginning to end, because we get that question a lot is, what can I have for bow season? Well, depending on where you are in the country, right. I live in North Carolina, and our bow season usually starts about the first or second weekend of September. Well, given my climate, it's really, really hard to go in and have a fall annual ready that's drawing deer, and you can, you've had time to pattern them and so on. As far as planting a food plot, of course, you've got your ag fields, and the guys would be watching that. But food plot specific, it's tough, and to have an early season plot in that in that September range, if you will, that's developed. But with something like the long range or the lockdown, you've got components that are going to jump out of the ground, provided you have the proper moisture, obviously, that are going to jump out, and it's going to give something right away for the deer to browse on while they're, you're waiting on the late season stuff to continue to develop, and, you can fall right back onto that as you continue to go through the season. So.
Yep, absolutely. So on plots like that, Daryl, is there anything extra you do? Because that's a lot of different kind of seed combos and different types of brassicas and all that from, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to think of the word there, but do you maintenance that different than you would just something that's just strictly clover?
Yeah, the soil test is going to help you determine, what you're going to need to do as far as getting the soil right in your nutrient recommendations, as far as your fertilizer and whatnot, because they are going to require different. Clover plot is going to require something different than long range per se. But from a soil prep type standpoint, you're still going to go in there, and I'm going to speak to provided that somebody's not running through there with a drill. Obviously, you're going to clean up your weeds, and whether it be mowing and drilling into that, or whether it be working the ground with a tiller or a disc, all the way down to, doing the best you can with a weed eater, a backpack sprayer, and a rake, So,
right.
it's making the most of what you have available to you. But, something like long range, you are going to want to, and even your brassicas, you're going to want a little bit more soil on top of those seeds. Not that they cannot germinate on top of the ground, but, the more soil contact, the better. And, a lot of people would say, hey, when you've got something like oats and brassicas mixed and various small and big seeds like that, how do you get it at the right depth? To that person, I would say you're going to work that more towards the smaller seed recommendation than the larger seed. So, you're going to want to plant that and, not bury the seed. That's a big issue a lot of plotters have with failure is they simply bury their seeds too deep.
Too much.
And you got to, yeah, absolutely. And you got to, think that if you got a seed that's buried a quarter of an inch deep versus a seed that gets buried down in there 3/4 to an inch deep, well, that's, most seeds coming out, they don't have that much energy to punch through an inch of soil or 3/4 or even maybe even a half. So just keeping those things in mind. Soil bed preparation is very critical to having a good stand. And, if you're working the soil, getting it, you're going to go out there a lot, and tiller is, not that a tiller is bad, but a tiller is, very guilty in the fact that it creates this beautiful, luscious powder seed bed. And then, guys, I saw a picture yesterday of a guy that, he was saying, I just planted this mix, and, just looking for the rain in this. Well, he showed a picture of the bare soil out there, and he had clearly gone through there with a tiller. And where his footsteps had walked through there, I bet you that he'd probably sank 3, 4, or 5 inches into this powdery dirt. Well, I wish the guy the best, but if he's got any small seeds in that mix, as that dirt continues to settle and pack back down and rain hits it, he stands a big chance of having a crop failure there because it's just going to have that seed's going to get buried too deep. So that is something that's a big reason for failure. And
sure.
So if you go out there, making that soil and seed bed preparation is key, is working that ground, firming it back up. It sounds counterproductive to go out there, turn your soil and then make it firm again. But,
right.
Keep in mind, you're not making it firm to the point that it was before. And just, but, right now is a good time of the year to start getting rid of, some guys are already planting in the upper regions of the country, but, most of the rest of the country is not. I think it's a little bit too early personally yet unless you're in the extreme north. But, I think guys tend to plant a little bit early, and it's still hot for one. But also, I think if you plant this early and you start the life cycle of that plant, by the time that you need it to be ready and for deer to eat it, you've got a tough, stemmy, fibrous type plant that, it's all about palatability.
Right.
Not that they won't come to it and eat, but they're going to be looking for that tender, nice, soft, lush forage before they are, something fibrous if they have that option available. So I think, that's something to keep in mind is, playing the weather, looking at the planting recommendations that we have on the back, and understanding that they are recommendations. And, most people are going to know their area, their specific area better than anybody sitting in an office, giving a recommendation per se.
Right. Yeah.
But now is a good time to be getting out there and starting the process if you're going to be planting fall plots of, spraying, going out there and killing off, the weeds and whatnot, just spraying it and letting it sit, or possibly even going ahead and killing it and working your ground. If you're going to break ground, work the ground and allow some weeds to, every time you open that ground, you're going to be bringing a new crop of weeds up to the surface and giving them an opportunity to germinate. So go in there, work your ground, or leave it locked up and just get the weeds out of there. And if you do open it up this early, just understand that you are going to have that new crop of weeds. And, so if you're planning on planting, you're going to probably need to go back in there and kill it off again, whether it be spraying or whether it be disking again. You're going to need to eliminate those. And if you do open it up now and you disc it and then you go disc it again, just remember not to bury that disc quite as deep. You've already broken the hard pan, if you will. You go back in there, all you really need to do is scratch that top, so that
right.
You're creating that top seed bed. So.
Okay. So right now, for those two that you mentioned was lockdown and long range, right? Is that what we talked about?
Yep.
Okay. So for those, Daryl, are you saying right now is the perfect time to start these fall plots?
Well, again, it's going to be dependent on your area.
Sure.
Yeah, but August is a huge month for planting food plots. I've been told, I don't know how somebody would know this, but that Labor Day, regardless of where you are in the country, is one of the biggest food planting weekends in the country, and it makes sense because it's a long weekend. Guys are
sure.
And they're definitely geared up by then to be working on the fall hunting stuff. But in the northern regions that Minnesota, parts of Michigan, and probably even New York and so on, there's guys definitely planning, and they should be planning. And but for the rest of the guys, it would be advantageous to be getting out there, not necessarily planting now, but starting to work that ground and get it prepared so that when you do go in there, it's not just all in one,
right.
one day or 2 days. You can save yourself a whole lot of headaches. And that's just 2 or 3 of the products. Obviously, you can plant either of our perennials in the fall too. So, but as far as where you're at now, I'd say you're in the same process, even if you're going to plant a perennial, of just starting to work that soil or getting the weeds eradicated out of there so that when it is time to plant, you're ready to roll.
And what do you say, Daryl? You sprayed it, herbicide and whatnot. Like, what's the optimal? Like, what's the advice for saying, like, hey, you need to give this 3, 4, or 5 days and really let it soak in, and then you go in there and bust the ground?
Well, if you're going to spray it off right now, I would probably tell you, if you're going to spray it, just wait until it's planting time.
Okay.
Because if you're going to open it, like I said, because most guys don't have the time, I'd say, in general, to spray it, then disc it, and then wait, and they're going to come back and disc it again, and they don't have multiple trips to the farm, so they,
right.
To do that. So in general, some guys obviously do, but if you're going to go out there and spray it, and right now, I don't know that I would advise you to open it up, because if you do open it up, by the time you go back to plant, you're going to have a whole new crop of weeds waiting for you that you're going to have to deal with. You're either going to have to disc them back under, or you're going to have to spray them again. So,
right.
You're doing good by eliminating more weed seed in your soil, but you're creating some more tractor time and work and money spent for yourself. Exactly. By the more times you do that. But
right.
that would be right now it would be you making that decision. Do I have the time to work it now? Kind of break it up, let things start working. But something probably to note, if it is the summer, it's hot, it's dry in some regions. If you go out there and open that ground up right now, you're going to lose a lot of your built-up soil moisture.
That makes a lot of sense,
for
sure.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea just to leave that ground alone and just let it sit. Kill your weeds, and that way that's where drills are so beneficial. But I think that that's the smaller percentage of guys still is guys using drills or having access to drills and so on. So if you're having to open up your ground, you don't want to, I would say you want to do that as minimal, even though it is a good practice as far as getting rid of the seed bank that's built up with weed seed in your soil. You have to think on the flip side of that of loss of soil moisture, and you want that as built up or as locked in as you can get it. It may seem dry on the top, but there's still probably some moisture down in there unless you open it and then it's gone.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Then it's gone. Yeah. That's a very good point. So now on the flip side of that, Daryl, let's say we have a big piece of ground and you're talking to somebody and advice-wise, what are you looking for somebody that can plant like major food plots? I mean, automatically, does your mind kind of go like, hey, like this guy's talking this way, he's got acres, we need to give him something with extra tonnage, or what? Or do you go straight to like a Clover because it can be there every year?
Well, I'm going to say that you're still going to want diversity. Yes, if the guy's if he's got a big tract of land and he's able to get perennials, I'm always going to tell somebody that, perennials should be a major part of your, food plot program, because, to your tonnage comment, you're going to get more tonnage throughout the year out of that perennial than you are any fall annual.
Right.
So, and a variety is going to be key. Even on the small parcel that we just talked about, I didn't say you can plant the same mix, of two different things in two different plots, but, giving the deer something variety is going to give you some holding power too, because as plants come and go in palatability, so, you're going to want to be, I would say if it's a big tract of land like we're talking about now, I would say putting 70 to 80% of it in perennials.
Okay.
If you're able to, I mean, again, you have to understand, how the property's set up. But I mean, we're going to assume that a guy has, food, the area to plant, and he's able to do that, and so on. And I like the strategy again if it lends itself to this of creating destination type plots where they're not necessarily, some guys don't even hunt their destination plot. That is a true like sanctuary food source.
Right.
They just want the deer to go to that. And, they have the micro satellite type plots, that are going to be strategically made to catch these deer going to that destination plot. And a destination plot could be comprised of still a lot of things. It could be your perennials could be stacked in there. It could be a mix. I love, whether it be stripping or whether it be saving the middle of a field for, putting your perennials in that and cutting and planting annuals around the perimeter. But mixes of different types of forages in the same field is a good thing. Not necessarily the mix, but literally carving out, here's an acre field and I'm going to have half of it in Clover and I'm going to have half of it in last stand. That's a very good strategy. Not necessarily, I wouldn't advise mixing them all the time. If you are going to mix if you're going to take a bag of last stand, you're going to take it and put it in a bag of foundation Clover, we'll understand that you've got one plant's a half acre, the other plant's a third, so you need to adjust your area accordingly. We see it all the time where guys are like, I'm just going to buy these, and they dump the kitchen sink in there, but they don't take all those planting, coverages and let that be their coverage. I mean, they might have an acre of ground here, and they're putting 3 acres worth of seed that they mix together because they wanted a mix of all of it. Well, you've kind of defeated a lot of your purpose that you were even trying to accomplish. But no, I mean, even on a destination plot, I mean, it could be late season grains or, corn or beans that you're going to leave standing. Strategy that we really like, and we've got some folks doing it, and I 100% believe that it works, is, if you're somebody that's going to get into cereal grains or I shouldn't say cereal grains, but stuff like corn and beans and stuff, your late seasons you're going to leave standing, is planting that entire perimeter of that field in clover or some type of perennial.
Okay.
One, I believe it takes a lot of pressure off of your late season crop. I mean, obviously a lot of guys have failure with beans, and it's not necessarily, the beans failing. It's just the deer eating them faster than they can grow.
Yeah, for sure.
And But we have definitely seen this strategy work where, and I'm not going to say that I can guarantee it, because I mean, a 1 acre bean plot isn't very big, as we know. And I mean, if you've got a high deer density, they can mow through all of that. But planting that perimeter in something like a clover, I mean, deer are browsing, edge eaters, and if they like some type of edge to be near them, so they, for getaway or whatnot, and
that's right.
So they'll browse in that perennial around the edges, and it just takes some pressure off of the desired main crop in that field, with, let's say, beans here, and just allows that to be. And one thing that you'll be surprised at, if you're planting big fields like that, when this all shakes out, I mean, even though you're only planting perimeter, it can end up being multiple acres worth of perennial clover or mixes that you've got on that edge. Even though it's a 20-foot, 30-foot swipe,
right?
It can you've got absolutely, and I mean, typically you're speaking to a bean field. I mean, your edges are going to be the first thing to get browsed down to nothing. You've got your drip lines of your trees, and you're something like a clover can tend to survive in that area a little bit better than, let's say a bean or even corn.
Now, Daryl, what would you say is the best way to maybe enhance that clover a little more? I mean, do you add a seed to it, or a lot of guys do radishes or beets or something like that? Is there a way that you're like, man, that's the perfect clover plot? To me, the only time that you're going to need to do that is if you're adding something, whether it be oats or whether it be radishes or some type of brassica to it, would be more from a nurse crop standpoint when you're first getting that clover established. Okay.
Once you've got it established, clover is such a powerful draw, and it's there year round. I mean, a lot of it gets the misconception of it's a spring to fall plot, and it kind of fizzles, and then that's where the brassicas take over, or wheats and beans or whatever. There's some truth to that, but there's too many cases where deer are digging neck deep in the snow and looking for clover. So
there has to be something, right, Daryl, when people say clover is king. So there has to be some truth.
Absolutely.
To it, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is the, one of the ultimate, and, it's king for a lot of reasons. I mean, deer like it. It's, when you compare it to something like an alfalfa, it's not as finicky as an alfalfa, still going to be getting good protein levels out of it. It's just a hardy plant. And, it kind of feeds itself by making its own nitrogen. It spreads, multiple different ways of keeping itself alive, and it's just a very adaptable type plant. And not that you can neglect the feeding it nutrients and pH and whatnot, but it is a good plant. And once you get a clover, to your point of once you get a clover field established, going back in there and trying to, unless you're maybe going through there with a drill or something, which guys do, if you just say, I want my, late season attraction of to be brassicas in, yeah, you can sow some brassicas in there, but, does it make it, in your words, the ultimate plot? I don't think so. Sure. It's not bad. It's not going to hurt the plot, right. But I think if you've got a healthy stand of clover, and I think you've got one of the ultimate plots you can have.
Right.
And then you work around it. It's that's why you see guys that they've had a clover plot for 5-6 years, and like, man, it still looks good. It's still drawing deer. And you tell them, like, well, you probably need to rotate that out. Even though you can keep it going longer, you still got to just work that soil a little bit and kind of, keep it fresh, get some, oxygen back in there, and turn that under. Even if it's just for one growing season, you can come right back with the clover. Okay. That's a hard pill to swallow for guys. You're, and and most aren't willing to do that. I mean, that's kind of getting more into a true land management type, crop rotation strategy there. But I think most food plotters, if it looks good and the deer are eating it, they don't want to be bothered with you telling them what the best practice may be. But, something else to note on crop rotation, not to get off topic there, but it is important if guys are planting brassica type plots like Last Stand, or it could be bulk that you bought from your co-op or anybody's. One thing to really remember is you don't really want to plant your brassicas in the same spot more than a couple years without rotating something through. And a lot of guys will fall in love with a seed mix or a variety or whatnot, and they just say, "Hey, it worked. I'm going back. back."
Yeah.
Well, over time,
easy to do,
you're absolutely, and I mean, it's human nature, I guess, but you definitely need to get that soil flush, and there's some harmful bacteria and various things that a brassica can kind of develop and leave in the soil, and you just want to flush it and run something else through there, and run a crop of clover through there. Why not? You might end up falling in love with the clover, but but definitely you want to keep make that note of, no matter how much you love it, you definitely know if you're going to be in there for the long term of keeping your soil where it needs to be and healthy, you got to do things like that, even though it might sting a little bit because you're not getting your favorite crop in there. But brassicas, that is an important thing to do, is to rotate at least every 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I really liked that you said, Daryl, a few minutes ago, was just that clover being an edge to a different type of plot, and kind of throughout this podcast, you've really talked about that, quite a bit, about liking that diversity with the food plots, and it just kind of goes to show you, it's almost like the rule when hunting whitetails. There was a rule for everything and then an exception to it all, and it sounds like that's the best way to kind of manage and strategize your food plots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's even down to, I believe it was the Drurys years ago coined the phrase of green to green or something along those lines.
Green to green, yeah.
And it really is a good strategy, and kudos to them for coming up with a nice marketing slogan to call it. But if you've got whether it be corn or whether it be beans or some type of summer type crop that's been developing, whether it be planting your edges or going out there and just disking up, mowing out strips of it and planting some type of fall annual, which was kind of basically the strategy that they're talking about. It's hard to go in there and say, I'm going to take out this nice-looking crop to plant something else. But, from a strategy standpoint, it really is very effective. And, at the end of the day, as hunters, we have to do, strategy is the number one thing, and we have to figure out the ways that are most effective to draw the most deer so that, put that deer in front of us to kill it. And, and obviously provide, nutrition, since we're talking about food plots, but, not just the edge strategy that we've been talking about, but having that variety, it gives you, you've got your late season beans, you've got your brassicas, or you've got something like something that I really highly recommend of putting in those type scenarios would be our long range. Just think of the diversity that you're creating in that one field.
That's a lot. That's a lot of
so, yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of variety, and deer are, I've probably already said it, they're browsers.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense to have that, a food plot like that, knowing that they are browsers.
Yeah, and a good variety is, I believe, will definitely hold more deer than one thing. Clover's king, but at the same time, if all you've got is clover, there's going to be times of the year you might have deer travel on you because they're looking for something else or something else over here. And what if your neighbor planted, a stand of brassicas and they get sweet? You might lose your deer.
That's right.
Even of that, so it's just, I think that variety is very critical, and if you're able to do it, it will pay off, a bulk of the time, I believe.
Yeah, and, I really like what you said about using that clover, if you can, as an edge around a food plot, because what that allows you to do for most people is now you have the opportunity to probably come in there and hunt that food plot on multiple winds, which is really important.
Yes.
And that just gives you more opportunity to use that food plot that you put your time and your money and your effort into, instead of just saying, man, I got to wait for a north wind that never comes. So I like that idea. For so many
And again,
reasons.
that goes back to strategy. I mean, that is a strategy. I mean, what you just said is a strategy for being able to hunt it. Even taking something like our new product this year, which is Borderline, which is, your screen, bedding, funnel type mix. And, guys are getting super creative with mixes like that, and they're cutting, the field in half, and they mow off the ends, and the deer, we've got it. We were fortunate enough last year. It was videos where a great buck comes out. He literally walks into the wall that's that borderline. I mean, the guys were filming from across the field, but they had both setups on both ends of that wall of the borderline. He walked right around. I mean, just played to it, but you could quadrant out the field to where, you're hidden, you can get in and out. Deer are going to continue to, buck's going to go out there, and he's going to want, if you've got that thing quadded off into 4 quads, just, per se, he's going to want to come check every one of them because he wants to see what's out there, and you can literally direct these deer by doing that. So, you got your edge planted in clover, you got your borderline, however you design it out there to try to help funnel your deer, and then you've got your annuals mixed around it. I mean, you got a lot going on there that you could really make play into your favor.
Yeah, so I want to get into that borderline just a little bit more before we get off the phone here, Daryl, but explain to everybody exactly what it is, just to kind of give them a better picture. It almost, like, to me, looks like corn, but it's like corn on steroids. It's huge, and it is legitimately, like you said, I want people to really know it's what they call a screen. You can put that stuff up, and you can't really see through it. It's Borderline's like the most amazing screen I've ever seen for that type of, screening plotting.
Yeah, it's a mix of various sorghums, Egyptian wheat, sun hemp. It's got sorghum Sudan grass in there. It's got a millet in there. And the strategy as we were developing it was, that's a lot of different plants. But the key to that is some plants are, we looked at the height that each plant matures at. And so, if you just went in there with 1 or 2 types of plant to try to reach, the height out of it, well, you might, as that plant, starts to die off in the winter and brown, you might be able to see right through that. And so we've got various levels of, of plant height in there just to make it, we wanted it to be thick from ground all the way up to the top. And you've got, depending on your conditions, your soil quality and your fertilization and all, you got a mix that can reach anywhere from 8 to 12 feet realistically. If everything lines up. Obviously, there's just like any other food source, things are going to weather, rain, and so on, and planting length. But it was designed to, like you say, screen off from roads, to create funnels, across fields and create strategies like we were just talking about. And we've even, during the testing, we just planted grids of it to have bedding. We just wanted to see if the deer would take to it to use it as bedding, and we were happy to see that they did. And we planted some other competitor stuff right beside it in the same setup to see, did they prefer bedding in ours better with the mixes that we had in there, or did they prefer? And they seem to use ours better for bedding and for definitely traveling through. I think there's some different traits between the two, not to bash anyone else's product there, but it's just, that's what we do. We're trying to test to be better than everybody else, obviously. But it has become a very, very useful screening plots, very useful tool in today's hunting arena. And, obviously there's some other plants on the market that are more like the perennial type screens that have gotten some popularity. And, there's a lot of discussion and some heated discussions that go on about which is better and that kind of stuff. But, perhaps things have their place, everything has their place, I guess. And, each guy's their property is their own. But, if you're trying to develop a cedar row or a tree hedge, well, you're going to, that's going to be slow going, and you're going to need some time. So with borderline being an annual, yes, you have to do it every year.
Right.
But, who's to say whether if you're going to rotate your crops around and do different things, and with the difference between it being an annual and, to me, a benefit is you can literally change your strategy every single year. You may have done it this year, one way this year, and as you hunted it, you said, I probably should have done it this way. Well, because it's an annual, you have the luxury of going back and doing that. But if you've gone out there and planted trees, or you've planted other types of perennial grasses that, are on the market, you better hope you get it right the first time. And so I think that's another big benefit, in my opinion, of borderline being an annual. You've got so much flexibility, and if you're leasing ground, nobody's going to want, the landowner's not going to want you going out there and planting, permanent type structures on their land. But if it's an annual, most of them aren't going to care about that. So there are so many different uses for the borderline, and it's just it really is something you can kind of play around and experiment with, and it's pretty easy to grow, very drought tolerant. So being that it's going to be planted in the late spring, early summer, that can be an iffy touch and go with summer plots with rain and whatnot. But once it gets going,
Sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, once it gets up and going, and it's going to obviously need some moisture, but really it likes hot, dry type weather. Okay. And so one thing that's critical to it is not planting it too early. You need to wait until your soil temperatures are at least 60 degrees, and that's soil temperature, not air temperature. And a good rule of thumb, if you're in any ag type situations, if you look around and they're planting their corn,
that's right.
You're pretty much
that's
safe
a good
to go.
indication. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from germination to it's full, some of that stuff looks like it gets 10 feet tall, but at its peak, how long does that take? Is it a 30, 45 days, 60 days?
I'd say to get your peak out of it, you're going to want it in the ground for at least 70 days. Okay. To get that, a good growing weather. And once your days start getting shorter, obviously it really does slow down from a growth standpoint. So, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's like, man, I couldn't get out. I bought the borderline, wanted to get it in. I couldn't. This particular guy happened to be in Indiana. He said, I couldn't get it out because it was too wet when I got it. And it's been where he's at, they've been getting quite a bit of rain. He's like, can I do it now? And, I told him, I said, I hate to tell you, but I wouldn't recommend it. You can do it, and you're going to get growth out of it, but you're not going to have enough time to maximize that plot. So in that standpoint, I'd rather see him put that, instead of wasting that ground on something that isn't going to get a whole lot of height, go ahead and maximize it with putting some food there.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
There's no, store that. Don't keep it in your barn. Keep, if sidetrack here, if you have carryover seed or not, don't throw it out in the barn where it's going to be exposed to the elements of especially heat and whatnot.
Right.
If you can keep it inside and in a closet or even in the if you've got room in your freezer, throw it in your freezer. That seems to work even better.
Okay.
And you'll carry that germination a lot longer. I mean, some seeds carry germ longer and better than others, but when you see a tag on a bag, just to know, I mean, if you didn't get it out and it says, well, the date runs out this year, don't let that, I mean, you got to have some understanding of what seeds you're talking about. Let's say clover. I mean, that's a hard seed. It's going to hold on to its germ pretty well. Throw that sucker in the freezer, and I bet you that the next year, I mean, I've planted seeds that were out of date per the tag 5 years old, literally.
Wow. Okay.
And it's just, I had it in the freezer, and are you going to get 90 to 100% germ? Probably not. But, at the end of the day, you're still going to get a crop out of it,
Yeah,
and,
which is beneficial. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you might have to mix it back with something else whatever, but I think putting it in the freezer, you can really hold on to that germ for a considerable amount of time. I mean, understanding the date you see on that tag. I mean, that's
right.
That's there not necessarily because the seed won't hold its germ. It's because that's the state regulatory type deal.
Okay.
So
that's good to know. Yeah, one thing that I think is really cool about that borderline, just talking with you, Daryl, is besides the obvious benefits to screening it and giving you access for entry and exits, but, man, you can also use it to one of those spots, like a lot of properties have them where you just know maybe it's a lower spot where you don't have mature trees and, you always walk over there and bump a few deer. Man, you could put that borderline up and kind of just expand that bedding range, and I just can't believe what an easy option that would be to just improve habitat-wise for a piece of property, just as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, it 100% can be used as a habitat. Again, you're going to have to be replanting it each year, but from a hunting season standpoint, creating a habitat, and I mean, you're basically, I mean, just think about if you put it right out in the a block out in the middle of a field, or you can have that deer laying there. He can get up, walk out there, get a bite, and go right back. He could literally make it his bedroom.
Right.
Right. I mean, and you can utilize it that way. And the bedding is kind of is not the most spoken piece of these types of products. With it's more, you hear more about the screening and using it for strategic funnels and stuff like that. But we have seen from our own testing that using it as creating a bedding area definitely has its benefits for sure.
Yeah,
and the deer will take to it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's almost everything I had thought of and wrote down to ask you, Daryl. And we didn't get much time to talk about, deer mineral or feed, but I definitely would like to get back with you and we could do that again sometime.
That's the beauty of having a lot of products. You can do a lot of podcasts, right?
Yeah, for sure. Big Tine has a ton. So, but I mean, for those that don't know, Daryl, let everybody know kind of where they can find Big Tine. I know it's pretty much at every store and even a lot of mom and pops, and obviously the website. But Big Tine has so many great products that, man, it's probably sometimes hard to choose for people. But I hope podcasts like this kind of help clarify those options. And we talked about a lot of good food plot options today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, it's at most of your major retailers, all the way down to the mom and pops, to to your ag type distributors. Of course, you can get it through our website, and and if somebody's got a question about creating the strategy, helping them determine what seeds to potentially mix, give us a call. We would be glad to try to walk you through that and help you with your property. And, when we're out in public at shows or various events, I mean, we spend a whole lot of time looking at a whole lot of apps, now that we've got that available to us, and helping people strategize and, talk to them about plots and stuff. But, yeah, do yourself a favor and study your land a little bit, learn the soils of it, and, anything we can help you figure out, give us a call, and we'll do the best we can from where we are.
Absolutely. So maybe the next one, Daryl, will get Joe to grace us with his fabulous presence.
Yeah, we'll see. He's a busy man these days. I will give him credit there, and he's a goofball, but he runs the ship very well. So
that's right.
Sure. He plays, and he's got he keeps things light, which is fun to work with.
Which is always nice. Yeah,
absolutely. And he's done such a good job with growing this line. And I'm happy to be partnered with him, and I think that we've got some good things coming down the pipe together, along with our sales guys, and we want to see this machine just grow and grow.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And Daryl, again, thanks so much, man. Can't wait till we do this again, and make sure everyone check out Big Tine and the line of products. And as always, deer season never ends. We'll see you guys again next week.